June 4, 1942. Somewhere in the vast Pacific Ocean, a battle is about to begin that will change the course of history. For Japanese aircraft carriers, the pride of the Imperial Navy, the same ships that devastated Pearl Harbor, sail confidently toward their target. They believe they are the hunters. They don't know they are the hunted. Hidden beyond the horizon, 3 American carriers lie in wait, battered, outnumbered, but armed with something the Japanese don't have: knowledge. In the next 24 hours, empires will clash. Ships worth billions will sink to the ocean floor. And in just 5 minutes, 5 incredible catastrophic minutes, the entire balance of power in the Pacific will shift forever. This is not just a story about ships and planes. It's a story about codebreakers who deciphered enemy secrets in dimly lit rooms, about pilots who flew into walls of anti-aircraft fire, knowing they would never return, about commanders who gambled everything on a single desperate throw of the dice. This is the Battle of Midway, the turning point of the Pacific War, the moment when America, reeling from defeat after defeat, finally struck back, and the day when Japan's dream of Pacific domination began to die in flames and smoke above a tiny island called Midway. To understand Midway, we must first understand how the war in the Pacific began, and how close America came to losing it. December 7, 1941, a date that lives in infamy. At 7:55 a.m., Japanese aircraft appeared over Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. In 2 devastating waves, they sank or damaged 8 battleships, destroyed nearly 200 aircraft, and killed over 2,400 Americans. It was a stunning blow. The U.S. Pacific Fleet, the shield protecting America's interests in the Pacific, was crippled in a single morning. But Pearl Harbor was just the beginning. The year is 1942. Just 6 months after the devastating attack on Pearl Harbor, the Pacific Ocean burns with war. In the months following Pearl Harbor, Japan launched a campaign of conquest unmatched in speed and scope. The Japanese Empire, confident and unstoppable, dominates the seas. December 8th, Japan invades Thailand and Malaysia. December 10th, Japanese bombers sink HMS Prince of Wales and HMS Repulse, 2 of Britain's most powerful warships. It's the first time capital ships are sunk by aircraft while at sea, a sign of what's to come. December 25th, Hong Kong falls. January 1942, the Philippines are invaded. American and Filipino forces, led by General Douglas MacArthur, fight desperately but are overwhelmed. February 15th, Singapore, the Gibraltar of the East, surrenders. Over 80,000 British and Commonwealth troops become prisoners. It's the largest surrender in British military history. March, the Dutch East Indies fall, giving Japan control of vital oil supplies. April, Burma is conquered, cutting off the Burma Road, China's last supply line to the outside world. May, the Philippines finally fall. MacArthur flees to Australia, vowing, "I shall return." From Hong Kong to the Philippines, from Singapore to the Solomon Islands, the rising sun flies high over conquered lands. In just 6 months, Japan has carved out an empire stretching across Southeast Asia and the Pacific. Millions live under Japanese occupation. The Allies are reeling, disorganized, defeated. Japan's military seems invincible. Their carriers, pilots, and naval commanders are the best in the world, battle-tested, experienced, supremely confident. But cracks are beginning to show. In April 1942, a daring raid led by Lieutenant Colonel Jimmy Doolittle strikes Tokyo itself. 16 American B-25 bombers, launched from the carrier USS Hornet, bomb the Japanese capital. The damage is minor. Most of the bombers crash or are abandoned in China. But the psychological impact is enormous. Japan's home islands are not invulnerable. The war can reach them. For Japan's military leaders, this is unacceptable. They must expand their defensive perimeter. They must destroy what remains of the American carrier fleet. And they believe they know how to do it. But far out in the vast Pacific, a tiny group of American codebreakers has uncovered something extraordinary. Deep beneath Pearl Harbor, in a basement known as the Dungeon, a team of cryptanalysts worked day and night in near-total secrecy. They were part of Station HYPO, the U.S. Navy's Signals Intelligence Unit in Hawaii. Their mission: break Japanese naval codes. Through intercepted radio messages, they've discovered that Japan is preparing for a massive assault, one that could crush what remains of the U.S. Navy. The Japanese used a complex code system called JN25. It was incredibly difficult to crack, layers of encryption that changed regularly. But the Americans had been working on it for months, painstakingly piecing together fragments of messages, building dictionaries of code groups, identifying patterns. Leading the effort was Commander Joseph Rockefort, a brilliant, eccentric officer who often worked in a smoking jacket and slippers, hunched over intercepts for hours on end. Rockefort and his team noticed something in late April 1942. Japanese message traffic was increasing. Preparations were being made for a major operation. The code name appeared again and again, AF. AF was the target. But where was AF? Rockefort suspected it was Midway Island, a tiny atoll roughly 1,300 miles northwest of Hawaii. But he needed proof. If he was wrong, the entire Pacific Fleet could be sent to the wrong location, leaving Hawaii vulnerable. So Rockefort devised a clever trick. He had Midway send an uncoded message reporting that their water distillation plant had broken down, that they were running low on fresh water. Days later, the codebreakers intercepted a Japanese message, AF is short of water.
AF was Midway.
No doubt about it. Their target is an island called Midway, a small, isolated atoll roughly halfway between Asia and America. On paper, it's nothing more than a speck in the ocean. But strategically, it's the gateway to Hawaii and to the American West Coast. Midway Atoll consists of two small islands, Sand Island and Eastern Island, surrounded by a coral reef. Total land area, about 2.4 square miles. It's home to a small garrison of U.S. Marines, a naval air station, and a few support personnel. It's isolated, barely defended, and seemingly insignificant. But in terms of strategy, it's priceless. Midway sits almost exactly halfway between Tokyo and San Francisco. Whoever controls Midway controls the Central Pacific. It's an unsinkable aircraft carrier, a refueling stop, a forward base. If Japan captures Midway, they can threaten Hawaii directly. If America loses Midway, the West Coast is exposed. The Japanese plan is bold. Lure the remaining U.S. aircraft carriers into a trap, destroy them, and force America to the negotiating table. Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto, the mastermind of Pearl Harbor, believes this will end the war in Japan's favor. Yamamoto is one of Japan's greatest naval minds. Ironically, he had opposed going to war with the United States, knowing America's industrial might. But once war began, he committed fully. His plan for Midway is complex and ambitious, perhaps too ambitious. He will send a diversionary force to attack the Aleutian Islands in Alaska, drawing American attention north. Meanwhile, the main striking force, 4 fleet carriers and their escorts, will attack Midway, destroying its defenses and occupying the island. Yamamoto believes the Americans will then sortie from Pearl Harbor to retake Midway. When they do, his battleships, including the massive Yamato, the largest battleship ever built, will be waiting to destroy them. It's a classic naval trap, and on paper it's brilliant, but it has one fatal flaw. The Americans know about it, but the Americans know what's coming. Thanks to cryptanalysts at Station HYPO in Hawaii, led by Commander Joseph Rockefort, the U.S. Navy has broken Japan's secret code, JN25. They know the date, they know the target, and they are ready. Admiral Chester W. Nimitz, the calm and calculating commander of the U.S. Pacific Fleet, makes a daring decision. Nimitz is the opposite of flashy. He's quiet, thoughtful, unflappable. He listens more than he talks. But when he makes a decision, it's final. He trusts Rockefort completely. Despite skepticism from some in Washington, Nimitz accepts that Midway is the target. Instead of waiting to be attacked, he plans an ambush of his own. 3 American carriers, USS Enterprise, USS Hornet, and USS Yorktown, are secretly positioned northeast of Midway, lying in wait. This is an incredible risk. At this point, the U.S. Pacific Fleet has only 3 operational carriers. If Nimitz is wrong, if the Japanese attack somewhere else, those carriers could be caught out of position and destroyed. Moreover, one of those carriers, USS Yorktown, was badly damaged at the Battle of the Coral Sea just weeks earlier. She should be in dry dock for months of repairs. But Nimitz needs every ship. He orders Pearl Harbor's shipyard workers to repair Yorktown in just 3 days. They work around the clock. Welders, engineers, electricians, 1,400 workers swarm over the ship. They patch holes, replace damaged systems, jury-rig what they can't fix properly. After 72 hours of non-stop work, Yorktown is declared seaworthy. She's not fully repaired, but she can fight. On May 28th, Enterprise and Hornet depart Pearl Harbor, heading for a position northeast of Midway designated Point Luck. On May 30th, Yorktown follows. The trap is set. By early June, the two fleets are converging on Midway, unaware of each other's exact positions. The Japanese force is massive. 4 fleet carriers, Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, and Hiryu, carry over 250 aircraft. These are the same carriers that struck Pearl Harbor. They are the pride of the Imperial Navy, crewed by Japan's most experienced pilots. Supporting them are battleships, cruisers, destroyers, submarines, dozens of ships spread across hundreds of miles of ocean. In overall command is Admiral Yamamoto himself, sailing aboard the battleship Yamato far to the rear, coordinating the entire operation. Leading the carrier striking force is Vice Admiral Chuchi Nagumo, an experienced but cautious commander. He led the Pearl Harbor attack and has been victorious in every engagement since. The Japanese are supremely confident. They outnumber the Americans. They have more ships, more planes, more experience. They believe the Americans don't even know they're coming. Meanwhile, the American force is smaller but determined. 3 carriers, Enterprise, Hornet, and Yorktown. About 230 aircraft, fighters, dive bombers, and torpedo bombers. Several cruisers and destroyers. And one enormous advantage, they know where the enemy is. In command of Task Force 16, Enterprise and Hornet, is Rear Admiral Raymond Spruance, filling in for Admiral Halsey, who is hospitalized with a skin condition. Spruance is not a carrier admiral. He's a cruiser man, methodical and cautious. Some wonder if he's aggressive enough for carrier warfare. He will soon prove them wrong. In command of Task Force 17 Yorktown is Rear Admiral Frank Jack Fletcher, the overall tactical commander. Both men are under strict orders from Nimitz. Inflict maximum damage on the enemy, but don't take unnecessary risks. America cannot afford to lose these carriers. On Midway itself, the small garrison prepares for the worst. Marines dig trenches, reinforce bunkers, set up anti-aircraft guns. Every available aircraft, old fighters, obsolete bombers, is readied for combat. They know they're outnumbered. They know the Japanese are coming. But they will not surrender. June 4th, 1942.
4:30 nachts.
A U.S. Navy PBY Catalina patrol plane, flying a search pattern west of Midway, spots the Japanese fleet. The radio man sends the message that will start the battle. Enemy carriers sighted. On Midway Island, air raid sirens wail. Marines scramble to their positions. Every aircraft on the island takes off, bombers, fighters, even obsolete biplanes. They must get airborne before the Japanese attack destroys them on the ground. At 6:20 a.m., the Japanese strike force arrives. On June 4th, 1942, the Japanese strike force arrives. Over 100 aircraft scream across the sky, bombing Midway Island with relentless fury. 108 Japanese aircraft, 0 fighters, Val dive bombers, and Kate torpedo bombers roar over Midway at wavetop level before climbing to attack altitude. The defenders fight back with everything they have, launching Marine fighters and anti-aircraft fire into the heavens. Marine F-4F Wildcats and obsolete F-2A Buffaloes climb to intercept. They are outmatched by the nimble Zeros. Many are shot down, but they fight with desperate courage, buying time. Below, anti-aircraft guns open up, filling the sky with flak. Marines fire machine guns, rifles, anything that can shoot. The Japanese bombers blast runways, fuel tanks, and buildings. Midway is hit hard, but it's not knocked out. The island's aircraft have already launched counterattacks. Torpedo bombers, dive bombers, and even ancient Vindicator biplanes fly out to strike the Japanese carriers. But these attacks are uncoordinated and suicidal. The planes are slow, obsolete, and lack fighter escort. Japanese Zeros and anti-aircraft fire tear them apart. Planes spiral into the ocean. Pilots bail out only to be strafed. It's a slaughter. But these brave men are not dying in vain. They are forcing the Japanese to react, to make decisions that will doom them. As the Japanese prepare for a second wave, they don't realize that their own carriers are now being hunted. Vice Admiral Nagumo, aboard the carrier Akagi, faces a dilemma. His first strike has damaged Midway, but the island is still operational. He needs a second strike to finish it, But his planes are returning from the first attack, low on fuel and ammunition. They need to land immediately, and he's just received reports of American ships in the area, though he doesn't yet know if carriers are among them. Nagumo makes a fateful decision. He orders his reserve aircraft, armed with torpedoes for attacking ships, to be rearmed with bombs for attacking Midway. It's a time-consuming process. Torpedoes must be removed from the aircraft and replaced with bombs. The torpedoes are wheeled below deck. The bombs are brought up. The carrier decks become chaotic, planes landing, planes being refueled, ordnance being moved. And then, at 7:28 a.m., everything changes. A scout plane radios back, have sighted 10 enemy surface ships, bearing 0-10 degrees, distance 240 miles from Midway. Enemy surface ships. But are there carriers? Minutes crawl by. Nagumo demands clarification. Finally, at 8:20 a.m., the scout reports, enemy force accompanied by what appears to be a carrier. Carrier. The Americans are here. They're not fleeing. They're hunting. Nagumo is now in a desperate position. His decks are cluttered with planes being rearmed. His first strike is still landing. He needs time to organize a proper strike. But time is running out. American scout planes have spotted them. The message goes out. Enemy carriers sighted. Aboard the American carriers, the moment everyone has been waiting for has arrived. Admiral Spruance, aboard Enterprise, makes a bold decision. He will launch an all-out strike immediately, before the Japanese can attack. It's risky. The range is extreme. His planes will barely have enough fuel to reach the target and return. But he must strike now. At 7 a.m., the American carriers begin launching their aircraft. Fighters, dive bombers, torpedo bombers, over 150 planes take to the sky. But there's a problem. The launch takes time. Planes from different squadrons are supposed to form up together before attacking. But some squadrons can't find each other. The fighters, slower dive bombers, and even slower torpedo bombers are scattered. Some decide to attack independently rather than waste time searching. This lack of coordination will prove costly. Then comes one of the most dramatic moments in naval history. U.S. torpedo bombers, flying low and slow, launch desperate attacks against the Japanese fleet. Torpedo bombers are the most vulnerable aircraft in naval warfare. They must fly low, barely 50 feet above the water, and slow around 100 miles per hour to drop their torpedoes accurately. This makes them sitting ducks for enemy fighters and anti-aircraft fire. From USS Hornet, Torpedo Squadron 8 VT-8 arrives first. They are led by Lieutenant Commander John Waldron, a tough, determined officer of Native American descent. Before the mission, he told his men, "If only one plane survives, I want that man to get a hit." VT-8 finds the Japanese carriers and attacks immediately, without fighter escort, without support. 15 TBD Devastator torpedo bombers press their attack. 0 fighters swarm them. The Devastators are slow, lumbering, defenseless. One by one, they are shot down. Some burst into flames. Others cartwheel into the ocean. Pilots and gunners bail out, only to drown in the open sea. Within minutes, all 15 aircraft are destroyed. Most are shot down before reaching their targets, entire squadrons wiped out. Only one man survives, Ensign George Gay. His plane is shot down just after releasing his torpedo. He clings to a floating seat cushion, hiding beneath it as the battle rages around him. Gay will float for hours, watching the entire battle unfold, before being rescued the next day. But VT-8 is just the beginning. Torpedo Squadron 6 from Enterprise attacks next. 10 planes. 9 are shot down. Torpedo Squadron 3 from Yorktown follows. 12 planes. 10 are shot down. Out of 41 torpedo bombers that attack the Japanese fleet, 35 are destroyed. It's a massacre, but their sacrifice forces the Japanese fighters down to sea level. The Zeros are so focused on slaughtering the torpedo bombers that they don't notice what's happening high above. Moments later, high above, the American dive bombers arrive, undetected.
10:20 morgens.
The dive bombers from Enterprise 33 SBD Dauntless aircraft, led by Lieutenant Commander Wade McCluskey, spot the Japanese carriers. They've been searching for over an hour, low on fuel, nearly ready to turn back. But McCluskey made a brilliant decision, following the wake of a Japanese destroyer that was rushing to rejoin the fleet. It led them straight to the carriers. Below them, four Japanese carriers steam in formation. Their decks are crowded with aircraft, fueled, armed, ready to launch. But they're not yet airborne. The sky opens. From 20,000 feet, they plunge down almost vertically, releasing bombs that scream toward the decks below. The dive bombers push over into their attack dives, nearly vertical plunges at over 250 miles per hour. G-forces press the pilots into their seats. The wind screams. The ocean rushes up. They release at 1,500 feet, pulling up so hard that the edges of their vision darken. In just 5 minutes, 3 of Japan's 4 carriers, Akagi, Kaga, and Soryu, are turned into infernos. Kaga is hit first, for bombs strike her flight deck within seconds. One penetrates to the hangar deck, detonating among fully fueled aircraft. The explosion triggers a chain reaction. Fuel, bombs, torpedoes, all explode in a massive fireball. Within minutes, Kaga is an inferno. Fires rage out of control. The crew abandons ship. She will burn for hours before sinking. Akagi, the flagship, is hit by a single bomb. Just one. But it's perfectly placed. The bomb penetrates the flight deck and explodes in the hangar, among aircraft being armed for the strike. Torpedoes explode. Aviation fuel ignites. The entire hangar becomes a furnace. Admiral Nagumo is forced to transfer his flag to a cruiser. Akagi's crew fights the fires desperately, but it's hopeless. She is scuttled the next day. Soryu is hit by 3 bombs in rapid succession. Like her sister ships, her hangar is full of armed and fueled aircraft. The bombs turn her into a blazing wreck. She will sink that evening, taking over 700 men with her. Flames engulf the ships, ammunition explodes, men dive into burning seas. The scenes on the burning carriers are horrific. Men trapped below decks scream as fire and smoke consume them. Others, badly burned, leap into the ocean. Some are sucked into the ship's propellers. Others drown, weighed down by their gear. On deck, ordnance cooks off in the heat. Torpedoes explode. Bombs detonate. Entire sections of the ships are blown apart. The pride of the Imperial Navy is dying before their eyes. In just 5 minutes, from 10:22 a.m. to 10:27 a.m., the balance of power in the Pacific has shifted. 3 fleet carriers, veteran ships of Pearl Harbor, of the Indian Ocean, of months of victorious campaigning, are burning wrecks. But 1 carrier remains. Only Hiryu, the 4th carrier, manages to strike back, launching planes that cripple the USS Yorktown. Hiryu, sailing slightly separated from the other carriers, escaped the initial attack. Her captain, Tomio Kaku, and air officer, Taman Yamaguchi, immediately launch a counterstrike. At 12 p.m., 18 Val dive bombers and 6 Zero fighters attack the American carriers. They find Yorktown. Yorktown's combat air patrol shoots down several attackers, but some get through. 3 bombs hit Yorktown. 1 penetrates deep into the ship, starting fires. Another hits the flight deck, killing many in the anti-aircraft crews. A 3rd damages the boilers, knocking out power. Yorktown slows, listing, smoke pouring from her wounds. Damage control teams work frantically. They isolate fires, patch holes, restore power. Incredibly, within 2 hours, Yorktown is back underway, capable of launching and recovering aircraft. But at 2:30 p.m., a second strike from Hiryu arrives. This time, torpedo bombers. Despite heavy anti-aircraft fire, 2 torpedoes hit Yorktown's port side. The explosions tear massive holes in her hull. Water floods in. Power fails completely. The ship lists heavily 26 degrees. The captain, Elliot Buckmaster, fearing she will capsize, orders abandon ship. The crew reluctantly leaves their ship, sliding down ropes into the water, where destroyers pick them up. Yorktown is left drifting, alone, seemingly doomed. But her story is not over yet. By evening, American dive bombers find Hiryu too. Scout planes from Enterprise and Yorktown locate her late in the afternoon. At 5 p.m., 24 dive bombers attack. For bombs hit Hiryu. Like her sister ships, her hangar is full of fueled and armed aircraft. The explosions are catastrophic. Fires spread instantly. The crew fights desperately, but the flames cannot be controlled. One final attack seals her fate. She burns until she sinks beneath the waves. Admiral Yamaguchi, one of Japan's finest carrier commanders, chooses to go down with his ship. So does Captain Kaku. They stand on the bridge, singing the Japanese national anthem as Hiryu sinks beneath them. By nightfall, all 4 Japanese carriers are gone. The ocean is littered with wreckage and oil. 4 Japanese carriers, the same ones that had attacked Pearl Harbor, are gone. Thousands of Japan's finest sailors and aviators are lost forever. Over 3,000 Japanese sailors are dead. Hundreds of aircraft, and more critically, hundreds of experienced pilots, are lost. Japan's carrier force, the most powerful in the world just 24 hours earlier, is shattered. Admiral Yamamoto, still far to the west aboard Yamato, receives the reports in stunned silence. His plan has failed. The American carriers are not destroyed. His are. At 2:55 a.m. on June 5th, Yamamoto issues the order, cease action. Return to base. The Battle of Midway is over. Part 9 Yorktown's final fight. Sound of salvage efforts. Distant explosions. A ship dying. Narration *. But the battle has one final, tragic act. Yorktown, abandoned and listing, refuses to sink. The next morning, Captain Buckmaster and a salvage crew return to the ship, hoping to save her. They work all day, fighting fires, pumping out water, stabilizing the list. It looks like Yorktown might survive after all. But Japanese submarine I-168, prowling the area, finds her. On the morning of June 6th, the submarine fires 4 torpedoes. 2 hit Yorktown. 1 hits the destroyer USS Hammond, which is tied alongside assisting with salvage. Hammond breaks in half and sinks in minutes, killing 80 men. Yorktown, mortally wounded, finally succumbs. On the morning of June 7th, she rolls over and sinks. She had fought bravely to the very end. Part 10 The Aftermath. Solemn music, waves, silence. Narration *. The Battle of Midway was over. In a single day, the tide of the Pacific War had turned. The losses were staggering. Japan lost 4 fleet carriers, 1 heavy cruiser,
Over 3,000 menn.
248 aircraft, hundreds of irreplaceable pilots. America lost 1 carrier, Yorktown, 1 destroyer, Hammond, about 150 aircraft, 307 men. But the numbers don't tell the whole story. Japan's carrier force was the backbone of its navy. It took years to build carriers, years to train pilots. These losses could never be fully replaced. Moreover, Japan lost psychological momentum. The aura of invincibility was shattered. For America, Midway was proof that Japan could be beaten, that intelligence and courage could overcome superior numbers. It wasn't sheer firepower that won the battle. It was intelligence, patience, and courage. The code breakers who uncovered the plan, working in secret, never receiving public recognition. The pilots who flew into near-certain death, buying time with their lives. The dive bomber pilots who arrived at the perfect moment, turning the tide in 5 minutes. The commanders who trusted their instincts. Together, they changed the course of history. Admiral Nimitz would later say, Midway was essentially a victory of intelligence. But it was more than that. It was a victory of sacrifice, of skill, of determination. After Midway, the Pacific War continued for 3 more years. There would be many more battles: Guadalcanal, the Philippines, Iwo Jima, Okinawa. But Japan was now on the defensive. The initiative had passed to America. The U.S. industrial machine, which Japan had hoped to avoid, now roared to life. New carriers, new planes, new ships poured from American factories. By 1943, America was launching a new Essex-class carrier every few months. Japan could barely replace its losses. The Battle of Midway proved one truth that still echoes through time. Sometimes wars are not won by the strongest armies, but by the smartest minds. Intelligence wins wars. Knowledge is power. The code breakers at Station HYPO, working in obscurity, contributed as much to victory as any combat pilot. Commander Rockefort never received proper recognition during his lifetime, but his work saved the Pacific Fleet and possibly changed the outcome of the war. The pilots of Torpedo Squadron 8 and all the torpedo bomber crews who sacrificed themselves died so that the dive bombers could succeed. Their bravery, though it seemed futile at the time, was essential to victory. And Admiral Nimitz's decision to trust the intelligence, to risk everything on an ambush, showed the kind of leadership that wins wars. Midway is studied in military academies around the world. It's a masterclass in intelligence, in surprise, in seizing the moment. It shows that battles are not won by numbers alone, but by knowledge, timing, and courage. Today, Midway Atoll is a wildlife refuge, home to millions of seabirds. The airstrips are overgrown. The bunkers are silent. But beneath the waves, the wrecks of the great carriers remain. Yorktown, Kaga, Akagi, Soryu, Hiryu, monuments to the men who fought and died there. Every year, veterans and historians gather to remember the Battle of Midway, to honor the codebreakers who worked in secret, the pilots who flew into the fire, the sailors who fought to save their ships, the commanders who made the hard decisions. The Battle of Midway was not just a naval engagement. It was the moment when the tide turned, when America, bloodied and reeling, stood up and struck back. It proved that even in the darkest hour, courage and intelligence can overcome overwhelming odds. And it reminds us that freedom is defended not just on battlefields, but in quiet rooms where patient minds break codes and uncover secrets. The men of Midway didn't know they were fighting at the turning point of history. They only knew their duty, but their sacrifice, their skill, their courage changed the world. Sound of waves, wind, silence. Narration, final line, soft but powerful. June 4th, 1942. 5 minutes that changed the war. A battle where the underdog won, where intelligence defeated strength, where courage turned the tide. This was Midway, and the world would never be the same.